We have been talking bowl games day and night here at the Voice of College Football, but the nice one about this one is that nobody's going to argue as to whether it's meaningful, and number two, nobody's opting out. Welcome into the Voice of College Football as we talk Michigan here each and every day. We upload content on a consistent basis, and of course, this is our Wolverines live show that we bring you each and every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Eastern Time. We got Dre Artis on the line, as we always do, to talk up Michigan. Unfortunately, Desmond can't join us, but you're going to have Dre, you're going to have Des for pregame and postgame coming up on Friday. Hey, Dre, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. Doing pretty good. Like a lot of Michigan fans, I'm highly, excited about Friday, and looking forward to making some history.
Absolutely. It would be historic. Just the eighth college football playoff, and Michigan's made it. The third Big Ten team to make it. Ohio State several times, and Michigan State back in 2015. And now we got Michigan in that position against Georgia. Before I remove the banner down below, keep in mind that we would love to keep this show going your way each and every Wednesday, and the channel delivering content on a daily basis. So please, if you own a business and could benefit from sponsoring us here at the Voice of College Football, Maize and Blue, hit me up at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. All right, let's see. It is Wednesday night. We've got 48 hours. We're starting to count down the hours, Dre.
Yeah. No, it's weird. It's one of these areas where, um, you've been waiting so long. You kind of have the high of winning the Big Ten title game, winning the conference, right? And then you know that you're going in the playoffs. You know you're in, right? Then the seeding comes out the following day, and then you have like this lull period, right? I think that excitement kind of naturally dies down a little bit. Um, the holidays start to come around, start getting other distractions in your life, and then you wake up and then wow, you're here, and I'm extremely excited. I'm optimistic, and it's one of those things where it sounds cliche, but really anything can happen. I mean, you have a 25% chance of being a national champion at the beginning of the game. So maybe even less, actually, based on what happens the game before. But so it's definitely a place that we're new to as a Michigan fan, but a long time coming, and very exciting.
Very cool. Folks, leave your comments and questions. We will get to them over the next 55 minutes as we take you all the way through. And again, we'll be announcing some pregame and postgame for the Michigan-Georgia game here at the Voice of College Football coming up on Friday, so stay tuned for that. Well, I think the most important item that's out there that nobody really has an answer to, because Michigan's not going to tell us exactly what's going on, is Dax Hill. There's multiple reports. It's all over online that he did not make the trip to Miami, and Michigan won't confirm or deny that. So if it's COVID related, I guess there's still a possibility that depending on when that happened, because we've seen this happen with a couple coaches at Alabama, Bill O'Brien, Doug Marrone. We've seen this happen with JT Daniels, where they were inactive for a while, then it ran its course, and the the 10-day kind of national protocol has become a 5-day, and then they clear and they're able to participate and they're good to go. So who knows what's going on with Dax Hill? And I just bring up coronavirus as being one possibility. It could be a number of things. It could be a family issue. It could be discipline. It could be who knows what.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just quite natural to lean towards COVID because of, let's just be honest, the landscape that we're in today, especially in sports. You're seeing this player going to protocol here, this player going to protocol here, professional in college ranks. You're seeing bowl games canceled. So that tends to be the the main obstacle for players or teams participating in the postseason. And I would think it's a pretty safe bet that anything outside of COVID, for the most part, right, outside of some kind of catastrophic family emergency, Dax Hill will make sure, if he is the player, which it seems like he is, he will make sure he's there to play. So we can't confirm that, but I think it makes sense for us to lean towards that way. And it's definitely a tough loss. I mean, you're talking about one of your most versatile, probably your most versatile player in your defense. Maybe not the best player, but definitely most versatile. I mean, just a couple streams ago, we were talking about the tight end for Georgia Bowers and who could be a good matchup for him on the field. Well, Dax Hill was one of the players that we brought up, and as well as our listeners or watchers, excuse me, brought up as well. But guess what? It looks like he may not be available. So now, what does Mike McDonald do? It's an absolutely terrible loss. Now, that's no excuse for this defense to come out there and to land on their face. They're 13 games in. It has to be next man up, and of course we will see a difference, but the defense cannot fall apart, and it's up to Mike McDonald and Jim Harbaugh to ensure that does not happen. And by all means, with the leadership that this team has displayed all year, starting from Aiden Hutchinson, I don't think that will happen. They won't fall apart, but they definitely will miss him.
Yeah, how many times have we seen a situation where maybe a player wasn't necessarily lost before the game? We've seen that situation, of course, too. But how many times in a huge game where within one play, two plays, right at the beginning of the game, first series, some key players gone, and then there's a bit of a fire drill, and the offense of the defense has to adjust and go to plan B, and hopefully those plans have already been figured out. Hey, we lose
Absolutely.
this player, we shift him here and we move him up from the second team to fill that spot, or it's just a straight swap from the second team position up to the first team or whatever it is. But as soon as I said that, two Ohio State situations come to mind, and that wouldn't be coincidental that those would come to mind for me. But, there are obviously other examples out there. Ted Ginn was lost after the opening kickoff of a national championship game against Florida in 2006. And then Trey Sermon, Ohio State's leading rusher, who had just run for 300 yards in the Big Ten championship game, was lost on the first play of the game in the national championship game against Alabama. And, it's football. You got to move on to the next guy. And Dax Hill, like you say, he's the most important part of that secondary for sure. And hopefully he can suit up and play, because unless you're a super serious Georgia fan who just wants to win at all costs, I think everybody else that's just on the Michigan side, of course, but even the rest of us just want to watch football and see the best players out there. We want to see Dax Hill on the field.
Well, you just want to see both teams at their best. From a product standpoint, you want to see both teams at their best. You don't want to see the quarterbacks going down. You want to see running backs, any key players. And Dax Hill, by all means, is an impact player. He's not just and by all means, I don't mean this as a diss to DJ Turner, or Taylor Upshaw or anything like that. But when you think about like star players, the impact players that people have become accustomed to seeing, Dax Hill's one of those guys. So you're going to miss that. It's not going to be one of those guys that he's you notice when he's now in the field. When number 30 is now in the field roaming and making plays, and I think one thing that will be interesting to learn about Mike McDonald and Harbaugh is, and granted, we don't know when this situation came apparent, but how good of a job do they do with preparing their team for this potential loss, right? Were they thinking ahead, right? Because here's the thing, even if this Dax Hill thing came out of nowhere last minute, a good coaching staff, you would think, continues to have contingency plans, backup plans based on the landscape of what's going on today. Players are popping up positive, coaches are popping up positive left and right. So you have to constantly be thinking about the what if scenarios. So that'll be interesting to see, if Mike McDonald and Harbaugh did a good job of that. And maybe it still doesn't matter. They still feel the true impact of the loss of Dax Hill anyway. But you will hope that they have been preparing before the situation came up.
Blank name is taking us back to some recent bowl games. Says the last time Michigan played in the Orange Bowl, star safety did not play. Hopefully the end result of the game will not happen again. So that would have been the Florida State game against in the Orange Bowl. Jabril Peppers did not play.
Right.
Jake Butt decided to play, got hurt.
Yeah, towards
like the first series of the game.
Yeah.
Took a serious injury. Then 2 years later in the 2018 Peach Bowl against Florida, Karan Higdon didn't play. Right. I don't think Rashawn Gary played. Somebody else didn't play. Somebody else that was
No, maybe it was a couple. No, I think Cleek played last year.
I thought there was somebody else that didn't play in that game. I thought they had at least 3 guys sit out of that game against Florida.
Rob J says, "Oh, it was Bush, Devin Bush. That probably is a good, good. Thank you, Rob, for doing that. Probably have to double check that, but that would have been a huge loss. No, I mean it's one of those things where this has bigger stakes in those games. I mean, those games were New Year's Six games, so big games. But this is, to win a national title. So I mean, it's even more, potentially even more catastrophic to this team. But look, there's still a chance that Dax Hill can play. So we're just speaking on what's speculated out there, and by all means, it's a big enough speculation where it's a huge deal. I mean, like, you can't just whistle by the graveyard on this. I mean, it's a potentially huge loss. And one of the things that I was very pleased to hear from Josh Gad is because Mark, and I'm sure fans also can relate to this. I've been wondering, how do the players react to all this layover time, this downtime between the conference championship and this game? Because just like fans, it's only human nature. You come off having this huge high of when you beat Ohio State in convincing fashion, then you go on and win a Big Ten title game, and you're about as high as you can get in terms of emotion. And then quite naturally, you come back home and you don't play any football. You're playing great football, your best football you have all year at this point in time. So how did the team handle that? Were they able to stay focused and be in tuned into the details throughout the weeks of practice? And one thing Josh Gaddis said during his interview, I believe down at the Orange Bowl, this past week, is he talked about like he hasn't noticed. He said he mentioned how we definitely would have loved to play the very next day if we could have after beating Iowa. From the way we felt internally, but he was very pleased with the attention to detail that players had, particularly on offense, of course, and that he felt like guys are staying locked in, which is great to hear. Because one thing you just don't want to see is you just hope that guys don't get too caught up in the moment and make sure that they stay locked in even throughout all this downtime.
There is a list of negatives that a team has to go through moving on from a conference championship game and then having to wait 3 to 4 weeks, basically 4 weeks, to play a playoff game. And it's unlike any other sport.
Mm-hmm.
You don't play the NBA conference finals and then sit for a month and then go play the finals, or pick your sport. The Super Bowl is not a month after the conference championship game.
Right, exactly.
It's just a difficult ask of these guys. But I guess the one positive is rest and rehab for anybody who's nicked up, and just that ability to, okay, you have that high on a Saturday night against Iowa, and instead of having to turn around like you would, let's say, in the NFL, if you didn't have a bye in the first round, if you had to turn around let's say you just clinched a playoff spot and have to turn around 6 to 7 days later and play a playoff game, that you don't need to rev up the team and say, yeah, we got to hit it and we're back at practice tomorrow and let's go. You can, I don't know how much time they gave them off to just kind of kick back, and maybe they had meetings, but they just, from a physical standpoint, you could give them at least a few days just to do nothing, because you got so much time to gear back up. So I guess that's one positive. And again, if anybody's nicked up, they've got 3 to 4 weeks to get as healthy as possible.
But vice versa, and that's a great point. But vice versa is also an opportunity based on how things are going nowadays to get sick or contract a virus. Because it's just, look, no matter how people view the effectiveness of vaccinations and all that aside, there is a virus out here, and it seems to be highly contagious, and it's just like we know these guys aren't in a bubble, right? They're on campus, they're around family. The holidays just happened. They're around family who are around other people, and it's almost like that extra allowed time, even though it was good for resting the body. Ironically, it allows opportunities to the body to contract other things.
True.
And that's an unfortunate side effect of the time we're in. But look, everyone has to deal with it too, and I think that is also something that we have to realize, and just probably going forward. I mean, teams are going to have to just figure out ways to prepare for losses. And I see Stewart said, definitely not bad, but catastrophic might be a bit of a hyperbole. Sure. I mean, I'm not, when I say catastrophic, I'm not saying that Michigan without Dax Hill has no chance of winning, but it's a big loss. I mean, he's a really good player for this team, and next man up. That's just how it has to be. But Mark, you brought up Ohio State earlier, right? No shocker, you're an Ohio State fan, and one thing I'm really curious about, if we could just take like a quick break from the Michigan-Georgia game, is I was really shocked, and maybe some of our fellow watchers were shocked to see some of the Ohio State players opted out of the Rose Bowl. I think it was Chris Olave, Matt Wilson, and then maybe somebody else I could be missing. And I know that we've seen the trends of lately of players opting out over the last couple of years, especially when they're not in the playoffs. And no, Ohio State's not in the playoffs, but well, I mean, this is the Rose Bowl, man. I mean, I guess we don't have to keep it to Ohio State, but and we see a guy like Kenny Pickett with barely any resume, really just 1 year in which he pops, now sitting out the Peach Bowl, and when he plays for Pittsburgh, where it's not like he's had a ton of great experiences in bowl season anyway. It's like, do you think we could potentially see this affect the playoffs eventually, or it's just kind of one of those years?
Well, we're seeing this more and more every year. So the perception of how important these bowl games is deteriorating. And so I don't know when the first time a player opted out of a bowl game to prepare themselves for the NFL draft. I do remember that it was maybe 6-7 years ago, whenever Christian McCaffrey and Leonard Fournette came out, that they were the first two guys that I remember that opted out of their bowl games going into the NFL draft. And that being the first time that people took notice of it, thinking, wow, okay, these star players aren't going to play in these bowl games. And it's only increased from there. So, yeah, we've got our different tiers of bowl games, starting with the games that kicked off, weeks ago with MAC teams and Sun Belt teams, and they kind of build up. And then we've got our tiers of what we consider to be the most important games, which, of course, aside from the playoffs, first and foremost at the top of the list, the Rose Bowl.
Right.
It's going to get the biggest TV rating. It always does, more than any other bowl game. And yeah, it draws some attention when 4 Ohio State players. So it's Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave, the receivers, Nicholas Petit-Frere, their offensive tackle, and Haskell Garrett at defensive tackle. So 4 players that are going to figure prominently in the NFL draft have decided that they don't want to risk injury. So I see both sides of this.
Yeah.
I really do. And I would like to take more of a stand on it, but they're free to do whatever they want. We live in America. They're at a position in which they don't need the school anymore. Unfortunately, I would love to
Really
the
so. Yeah.
school or the football program to be able to penalize them in some way, but they don't need to go to another class if they don't want to. They don't need to do anything. Now, if I was the school and they were going to quit the football team, I wouldn't allow them to continue their scholarship and finish out the school year because that would be a violation to me of their scholarship. But
Yeah.
I doubt if these guys ever go to class again. I think that's it. They're preparing for the NFL draft. They're out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's really no way to penalize them in any way. And they've measured the risk. And we just mentioned Jake Butt, Jalen Smith, Dallas Cowboys linebacker, played for Notre Dame. He got seriously hurt in the Fiesta Bowl. Now, I'd love to see somebody do a study on the risk percentage, the chance that a player is going to be seriously injured or even injured at all in any football game leading into the NFL draft. It's easy for me to say since I'm not out there, taking collisions, 50 times in a game against guys that weigh 250 to 300 pounds. So it's easy for me to say, but I'm guessing that the risk is minimal. For as much injury as there is in football, if you really look at the landscape of how many players are on the field and how many are playing and how many make it through the entire season, it's almost all of them.
Yeah.
So the risk of injury is minuscule, but they're weighing it against the price that they're going to pay, literally, if they're seriously injured. So I understand the decision. I hate it. It's not good for the sport. And I almost feel like it's a violation against your team. You're not sitting out any other games. So Kenneth Walker's sitting out this bowl game against Pitt.
Right.
Let's take him, for example. The last game of the season at Michigan State, as soon as Michigan State lost to Ohio State, they had lost to Purdue. As soon as they lost to Ohio State, they were out of the Big Ten race. Mm-hmm. So why are those games any more meaningful? Whomever they played at the end of the year, they played like Rutgers and Penn State.
Yeah.
Why are those 2 games any more meaningful? If anything, they're less meaningful. Less people are going to watch them than are going to watch the Peach Bowl in a few days. So why didn't he sit out those games?
No, I think that's a great point. I think it started back when the Christian McCaffreys of the world when they first did it, and then it just became like that was the out, right? That was like, okay, we haven't seen it because by all means, based on what we've seen lately, if we dare see players, I know Nick Bosa, he kind of opted out of that if his last season of Ohio State, I think he pulled his groin. It was some kind of groin injury. It happened versus TCU, if I'm not mistaken, like week 2. And he essentially, opted out, right? I mean, he could have came back, So, I mean, you didn't see players doing that necessarily, but I see your point, because if the games after you're technically eliminated from playoff contention, then why play the rest of them? I get it. Thing with Kenneth Walker III compared to like a Kenny Pickett is that there are certain positions I understand. Okay, like maybe you should sit out because there is high risk, right? Particularly for a position where, to be honest, the value has decreased in the pro ranks a little bit compared to how it used to be, right? You don't really see running backs getting drafted in the first round anymore. That rarely happens. He probably won't go first round. And it has nothing to do with the type of player he is. It's more or less about how NFL teams value running backs. Running backs are now a dime a dozen, right? So you can draft them. Essentially, an ideal situation, a team wants to draft a running back, get what 4 or 5 years out of him before they have to pay him, and then let them go before they have to pay him and find another guy. So if you're a kid like Kenneth Walker III, you essentially want to get drafted as high as you can because that might be your only payday, essentially, right? So I get it. But guys like Chris Olave, who play receiver, like the chances of you getting hurt, like seriously in these games, like come on, man, like that's where I'm like in that risk assessment. You'll be interesting to see what they're taking into account because where you play has to be part of that. Being a quarterback, I mean, you're not. How many hits do quarterbacks take a game normally? What, 4? 5? Especially if you're on a solid team, right? Like, come on, like most likely Kenny Pickett will be fine, especially playing against a defense like MSU. At least pass defense is not very good. I'm not trying to take a shot. It is what it is. So it's like that's when it's like, come on, are we doing this because? And it's also a pride thing. It's like, I wonder, is this a generational thing we're seeing? Like,
Oh, well, definitely.
you're going to
It
the
is.
NFL, you're going to the next level, right? But where do you leave room for? You want to make your money for memories, right? For leaving your stamp in the history of the school you attended, right? Say, hey, I won a Rose Bowl. Like I went to Pasadena one more time. I played at Pittsburgh that doesn't have like this rich tradition of winning, and and I was able to lead them to a New Year's Six bowl and we win, right? And those are the type of things that I do wonder about. And by all means, I understand guys protecting their value and all that. It's just like, it does beg the question, what value does I don't know, these once in a lifetime opportunities to play in these bowl games have as well.
So you think that part of our, as fans, media, whomever, our assessment of whether players should sit out is based on what position they play?
I think that should be part of it. Because look, football is a brutal sport. We all know that, but I think it's easier if you understand the game of football to conceive why X player was sick compared to X, right? It's just, I'm not saying one is value over the other. I'm just saying that it's kind of understandable. Hey, you're a running back, especially like K9, you're going to take what, 25, 30 carries in a Peach Bowl if you play. Yeah, there's a chance all it takes is one hit compared to if you're Chris Olave, you might only take 2 or 3 hits, like real hits. Most of the time you're going to be catching the ball, dropping, running out of bounds, or catching the end zone for a touchdown. You're not going to be you're not going out there. This isn't, like some heavy pro style offense where you're about to get real nasty in the block and run blocking. You're going to stay out there pretty clean. So by all means, I understand why guys do it. It's just, you kind of wonder when does it get a little bit more balanced? Now I think it's kind of going more towards one way. When do we kind of find our balance here a little bit? That's all.
Yeah. So everything that you said makes total sense. There's different levels of physicality and risk depending on what position you're playing in football. But I would never be the person to say, oh, you play running back. It's okay that you sit out because you're going to get beat up 25 times a game. You play wide receiver. You catch the ball half the time and run out of bounds or catch touchdowns so you don't get hit. So like, I don't think anybody can make, that's the truth, that there are different levels of physicality, but to try to evaluate that, like nobody to me has ever done a study to say running backs get injured this much, wide receivers get injured this much, offensive linemen get injured this much. Like I've got nothing to back that up.
Right. No,
like I don't know what that is. And then I was just curious. So I looked up Michigan State's 14th in the country in sacks defensively. So out of 130 teams, Kenny Pickett's got a fairly high likelihood of getting sacked more often than he would against just about anybody else that he played.
So I guess there's equal chance of getting hurt. Well,
I
I
don't know
get
if
it.
there's an equal chance. I just have no idea. But
Yeah.
what do you make? What you said makes total sense, that the running back takes more of a pounding. I don't know if a running back takes the kind of shot that a receiver potentially takes
Oh
coming
no,
across
not
the
especially
middle.
look, a post over the middle. No, I mean, like when you're exposed, absolutely, I get that. Compared to uh close in proximity, most running back hits are close in
Yeah,
proximity.
it's more of a grind.
Right. So no, by
It's a
all means, I
pounding.
understand that. Yeah. Well, and that kind of brings us to like something that Aiden Hutchinson said. Because like some of my Michigan fans are not happy that I'm not talking about Michigan. Trust me, I'm getting back to them. But to bringing up something Aiden brought up. Aiden was asked about, you know, what does he think about players, sitting out? Would he essentially? I'm paraphrasing, but would he sit out if Michigan wasn't playing the playoffs? And he essentially, dismissed that. Saying no, I wouldn't. Something I wouldn't, leave my brothers out or play, my guys out to dry. I wouldn't hang them out to dry. And for one, I don't think that was just lip service. Based on the leadership and consistency of that leadership Aiden has displayed, I do believe him. I believe that would have been his mindset. And I'll rather, if they would have played out like that, who knows? Because he is projected now to be, if not the number one, at least the number 2 overall pick in this upcoming draft. So there's a lot for him to lose here. But of course, for Michigan being in the playoff, he's not going to sit out. But it is interesting because I do think there still are some guys out there who just have a close, and Aiden may be a special case because he has such a close tie to the school, with his father being a really good player there, and he's always talked about this year as wanting to leave a legacy and a stamp on his history for Michigan football. So he may be the anomaly. Most guys don't have those type of ties to their school, but it was refreshing to hear a player say that because at least as a fan, right? Selfishly, as a fan, that a guy cares about the school that much. But you don't really see a ton of Georgia or Michigan players overall in terms of injury having much issues. I think most teams are, for the most part, pretty healthy outside of the COVID scares they have had lately.
Absolutely. And we had a few people chime in with, I don't know if this, no offense to them, I don't know if this information's accurate. Anytime some people post things like this, but maybe I lost track of it at this point. People had posted the testing. Oh, so unknown user says, from what I read, the NCAA protocol is a negative test within 72 hours or proof of full vaccination, which Michigan has. If Dax tested positive before they left, he will have to sit for 5 days and tested negative twice. So, there was a bowl game last night with Mississippi State and Texas Tech where Mississippi State already had opt-outs. They already had COVID absences. And then right before the game kicked off, they had another, I think it was 10 players that were eliminated from the roster that couldn't go out on the field. I don't know how closely they test these players or get the test results back before they hit the field, but they didn't take the guys off the field, but almost to that degree where 10 guys couldn't play right before kickoff.
Oh, that's an absolute nightmare scenario. That is a nightmare scenario, especially like for the playoffs. But it's the landscape we live in. I mean, now you mentioned we're 48 hours away, less now. Thank you, Don. And I'm sure they probably will do one more test. I don't know, maybe one more test before these guys hit the field. I mean, could you see? What was at the Holiday Bowl yesterday? Was canceled 4 hours before kickoff? No. Look, the NCAA is not going to cancel the playoffs, but who knows what last minute changes can happen based on some potential testing that may happen between now and then. So that's definitely a cause for concern. Um, Let me ask you this: with JT Daniels, when he was originally, uh, they said that he tested positive for COVID. Um, at that point in time, if you were a Michigan fan, would you have been jumping for joy because you didn't want to see him, and you want to see Stetson Bennett, or would you have been more indifferent because you don't think there's much of a difference between the quarterbacks?
Well, from everything I gather, Stetson Bennett is the starting quarterback. And so JT Daniels, I will be surprised unless Georgia gets in a hole and Stetson Bennett is mostly to blame and he just gets pulled, that JT Daniels is going to play. So it's more about security or insurance of having a capable backup quarterback who has experience. So, and I'm not saying that Stetson Bennett's better than JT Daniels. That's not my call. I tend to think that JT Daniels is better than Stetson Bennett, actually.
Yeah,
But if I was coaching Georgia, JT Daniels would most likely be the starter right now. But Bennett's the starter. And so I look at it more from the standpoint of just it's supplying Georgia with that backup security. I don't think
yeah,
it really changes anything as long as Stetson Bennett's healthy.
yeah. And I also prefer Stetson Bennett to play. And it's, if anything, just due to his miniature in size. What one issue that smaller quarterbacks can have is the tendency to get their passes blocked and tipped at the line of scrimmage. So when you think about the strength of this Michigan football team, particularly on defense, which is their
Yep.
ability to generate a pass rush, well, even in times where you're not able to necessarily sack a quarterback, just to get your hands up, and we've seen this line do that plenty of times this year. Get your hands up and bat some passes down could be almost equally demoralizing as a sack can be, because even though you may not be causing loss of yards, that does play a factor in the quarterback's head, right? Because now on those, crossing routes or 5 yards in the ends or wherever there is, anytime they got to come over the middle of the field, they have to maybe throw that ball a couple of inches higher than they probably are used to throwing it, right? And we know that these guys are all creatures of habit and repetition. Well, normally they have like their passing lanes they're used to in practice and throwing it. Well, all of a sudden now the ball's getting tipped, that throws your whole rhythm off. So I think that's another area that can benefit this Michigan defense with Stetson Bennett playing. Plus, he's not extremely mobile. So I definitely believe it aids him to play, and he can make mistakes as well.
Yeah, he's not Michael Vick, that's for
No,
sure.
by
He's
no
not
means.
that, but he's a mobile quarterback. He can run. He's who am I going to compare him to? The Michigan State scene. I think he's definitely more mobile than CJ Stroud and probably Peyton Thorne, and he's in that Adrian Martinez mode. He's that fast, quick, maybe more so, but he's not as big a body. He's not as tough to bring down as Adrian Martinez. He's not a big body athlete, no. And like you say about batting passes down, deflecting passes, I know if I was a quarterback, that would get in my head. So I got to think it would, like you say, if suddenly they're not seeing the same, or they get a pass batted or two passes batted, then they're starting to look for passing lanes that they didn't have to look. They can't make the assumption that they've got a clean passing lane to throw downfield. Like you say, they may throw it slightly higher, or they've got, that just gives them another thing that they got to process and think about when they're back to pass, that, oh, I got to look for a lane. I can't just, this makes it even tougher to find an open receiver. Besides finding an open receiver, I got to find a passing lane in my offensive line.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah, in a matter of seconds, when you
Yeah.
have guys coming at you, And I think another thing too is, look, especially if Dax Hill doesn't play. I mean, we know that Georgia has the weapons to counteract what Michigan loves to do well. The question would be essentially, how does Georgia offensive line uh, uh, do with giving those extra couple seconds, that Stetson would need? I personally believe very much in David Ojabo and Hutchinson. They're going to be able to get home. But I think another player that's going to have a huge game is Josh. I always mix up him and his brother. His brother is Jane Ross, but Josh Ross is the guy. Josh Ross.
Other people do that too.
Fun fact. I actually went to school with James Ross. We went to the same school at one point in time. Fun fact. We're both from Detroit. Anyway, Josh is going to have to have a big game, because also you want to be able to keep Georgia in those predictable passing situation. So, limiting Georgia's run game is going to be important, and we know Josh can do that very well. He's a very interesting player because he has times where he can disappear on the field, but also, I don't know if you notice sometimes, Mark, but sometimes he'll just shoot through the line of scrimmage really well. I mean, ideally speaking, reading the play, and the great linebackers are able to read the play, see the gap. Well, hopefully your defensive line does a good enough job holding up their gaps. They see that gap and they can split through there like lightning and meet the running back. And it's a beautiful thing to see when it happens. And so there are times where like he'll just disappear, that he'll bam, like he'll come out of nowhere. You're like, man, what was that? And he's also kind of awesome because he uses a neck roll. You don't really see that nowadays. But he's going to have a big game as well. But let me, so I mean, how do you think the Michigan front seven, pairs up against, the Russian attack for Georgia?
Well, we got about 10 minutes here, and since people really want us to break down this game, I'm going to give you my best. Not that Dre's not going to talk for the next 10 minutes. I won't say it like that, but I'm going to give you my best takes on this game and what I think is important. So we'll start right there.
Okay.
I made the comment either on here or to somebody else when I was asked about keys to the game. Is the biggest key to this game that I can see, and the thing that I will be watching for immediately when Georgia's throwing the ball, is how they're protecting Stetson Bennett. And not just how effective they are, but what are they doing to protect him? Ohio State got a little, I don't know if it's cocky, arrogant, or just they had confidence in their tackles to hold up against Michigan's rush ends. So Dre's telling us Ohio State was cocky, arrogant, and they paid a huge price for it, which I didn't understand. As the game unfolded, I didn't get it, because I'm thinking Ohio State's 3 wide receivers are the ones doing all the damage. Yeah, you got a tight end who's going to play in the NFL, but you don't need him as a pass catcher today. He's not doing you any good. Keep him in. Keep him in. He's a big body. He's a tight end. And I'm not talking about letting a back chip Ojabo or Hutchinson on their way on a pass route. That's not good enough. I'm talking about like full pass pro, like max protect. That's what I would do. Unless they've got a lot of confidence that their tackles are better than Ohio State's, which they might be, but Ohio State's 2 are certainly going to play on Sundays and most likely start. But Georgia's might be better, and they might feel confident that they can hang on an island against those 2. Again, I wouldn't take that risk. I'd go full max protection most of the time, or at least I might trust those guys initially. And hey, if it works and they hold up, great. If they don't, well, we've practiced and we've got the plays and the pass pro concepts in our game plan to go immediately right to them. I'm not seeing Stetson Bennett on his back more than maybe twice before I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. We're max protecting. And I just need my receivers, and I guess I'm going to play 2 tight ends because I want Bowers out on pass routes. I don't want him staying in because I need that mismatch downfield. So that's my second key. So my first key is these 2 tackles of Georgia holding up against Ajabo and Hutchinson, and what Georgia's game plan is in terms of helping those 2 guys. My next one would be seeing Brock Bowers downfield and how Michigan takes that on from a safety / linebacker perspective. Who gets that assignment, or what number of players get that assignment, and how effective they are, because I think that's a tough matchup. And then I also think that George Pickens, even though his numbers are inconsequential this year because he tore his ACL in the offseason and didn't come back until a few games left in the season for Georgia. But he's an elite 5-star receiver, and he showed with a deep ball against Alabama that maybe he's ready to roll, ready to get into the flow and be a factor. And so his one-on-one matchup, or whatever they do to bracket him or give a little help his way, I think that's huge. I think we're going to get a feel pretty early, just like we did in the Ohio State game. It was pretty easy to figure out early, oh, wow, Michigan's offensive line is beating them up, is pushing them around, is pounding them. And when you see that physical dominance, it usually doesn't go away. Sometimes you can see an adjustment. If it's a scheme issue, then if you've got a good coaching staff, they can make some adjustments and, oh, okay, this dude's getting beat. Let's give him help. Boom, boom, boom. And we can shore that up. But when you're just getting manhandled up front, and Ohio State only looked that bad on rush defense twice this year, and it was against Oregon and it was against Michigan, but they were 2 completely different problems. The Oregon issue was they were out schemed. Their players were out of position. You didn't even see them in the TV frame half the time. The play calling just totally fooled Ohio State's defense. Their defensive alignments were awful. They just got out schemed. Against Michigan, their players were in position all the time. They didn't get fooled by anything. They just got whipped. They just got pushed around, dragged around the field. They weren't like gaping holes because their linebackers weren't out of position. They were holes. They were nice lanes to run through, but usually there was contact made fairly close to the line of scrimmage, but the offensive linemen just continued just to push dudes down the field, and Haskins continued to just pound them, and he didn't go down immediately. He went down 7 yards later. So seeing that physical matchup is going to be huge. And I do think Cade and Stetson Bennett are similar quarterbacks, except for that one key we were talking about the other day, to me, that if history repeats itself, Cade McNamara doesn't make the mistakes that Stetson Bennett makes.
Yeah. And I said, when I said that, Desmond, who's not here, tried to make me seem like like the bad guy. How dare you compare them? I'm like, no, dude, they're actually pretty close. But whatever. I guess we'll find out on Friday. No, I agree a lot with what you said, Mark. And I think, which you brought up the physicality that Michigan displayed early in the Ohio State game. I think what it did more than anything was set the tone, and it started the mental. There are multiple games that go on within the game, right? You have the mental side, you have the physical side, you have the schematic side, which the coaches handle, right? And I think right away, what Michigan has done a beautiful job of this whole year was setting the tone and winning the physical game very, very early. And I think, especially playing against a talented team like Georgia, Michigan, just like Ohio State, we had to find a way to physically set the tone and show Georgia we're not just some puny Big Ten team coming from up north. We're here, and we're here to play. And these guys from up north can hit and are strong as well. Because the SEC and those boys down there, they really believe, that they all country fed. and they can all just push you over because they do have huge offensive linemen. And they can just maul you. And defensive linemen, they can just overpower you, and you can't overpower them if you're not playing for a school that doesn't say that's not part of the SEC. And I think that's going to be one of the things that Michigan may have the opportunity potentially to catch Georgia off guard a little bit. This is not a game in which one team is going to out. There's a huge discrepancy in terms of athleticism. I think they're pretty close. But definitely, Michigan has showed the recipe that they have a element to their game that maybe Alabama doesn't even have. I think Michigan has based on how they played the last couple of weeks, has the most effective running game in the country, especially offensive line play. So anytime you have that, I mean, that's just it's tough to deal with that for 60 minutes. You may get up and hype and ready to go for a quarter and a half, maybe even a halftime. But when it's the third quarter, mid-third quarter, or even fourth quarter, and Michigan's offensive line is still mauling you like they have been doing all game, eventually you start to break a little bit. I mean, that's just tough. You start to break mentally. You start making mistakes, as you brought up, Mark, with having guys in the right position, shooting your gas correctly. You start breaking down physically, being tired. We saw Jordan Davis basically giving no push at some point in that game versus Alabama. So, it's just Michigan, they just lean on you and lean on you. If they're able to do that against Georgia, I think you will see eventually that Georgia defense start to break a little bit. And I think just like the Ohio State game, Michigan has to win a time of possession. They have to do that. Unless they're going to do the anomaly like they gave versus Iowa and get these huge explosive plays, which are scoring 14 points in a matter of, 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, that's breaking the norm of how this Michigan team normally operates. Now, if they do that, maybe you can do a couple different things. But other than that, it's going to be one of those games where you're just going to have to lean on Georgia and eventually make them break.
So Georgia remains a 7.5-point favorite in the game. I think that Vegas believes in the SEC. I think Vegas believes in the recruiting rankings, and they believe in the defense that they saw the entire season until the SEC championship game. That's got to be my conclusion on that.
That's fine. That they can think what they're going to, and Mark, we talked about this before. He was like, how much value do you put into Vegas? And I don't remember what was the spread before the Ohio State game, but I think that's probably when we talked about
it's
it.
About the same.
Yeah, about the same. So look, at the end of the day, I think what Michigan fans can take solace in is that there are a couple things you can bank on this team doing. They will show up ready to play. They will show up. And they will try, not saying they would try to set the tone physically. And they are not going to beat themselves. Now, rather how talent plays out during the game, that remains to be seen. But I guarantee you, Michigan is not going to show up to this game not prepared and not ready to be in a dogfight. And no matter what happens in the course of this game, this Michigan team won't break. That don't mean they will win. They're going to have a really good chance to win, but they won't break. And I think that gives you solace. It doesn't matter what the outside world says. This Michigan team all year has shown to me, to our fellow fans out there, to people across the country, that they don't care about rankings. They don't care about what the outside world thinks. They have a special belief inside that locker room that they can get anything done.
Folks understand that between the show that we do here each and every week with Dre and Dez, that we've got, oh my goodness, if you check out this channel, a lot of the things that you guys are talking about and bringing up, if you guys want to do a deep dive in analysis and breakdowns of Georgia and Michigan, there's a ton here. And you can go to the main channel, the Voice of College Football, and there's a ton there. We did like 90 minutes to 2 hours with Georgia media and Michigan media at the same time. And we've got all sorts of different segments. I've got segments that I've posted where I've broken down all the numbers when it comes to rushing offense against rushing defense, pass offense, pass defense, red zone, third down, fourth down efficiency, all that stuff. Tons of videos, again, right here on the Michigan channel. and over on our Voice of College Football, the main channel. We've got an SEC channel. We post tons of content there breaking down this game. So I'm guessing we've got 10 or 15 hours of analysis here. So dig in. You got 48 hours, dig in. Dre, we appreciate it. Unless you feel like sticking around and answering some questions, I got to run.
I'll stick around for another 10 minutes to answer some questions. No problem.
Okay. If you just want to stay right there, I'm just going to change out the banner. I'm taking off, everybody. I will be on late night tonight after the final bowl game, the Oregon-Oklahoma game, taking calls over on the main channel, so you can join me there. Dre, if I don't talk to you, enjoy the game, man.
You as well. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
All right, guys. So, look, you've been begging to get into this game. So, look, we've all had a huge layover. Getting ready for this game since we last seen this team play. What was that? The 6th of December? Can't really remember the date, but it was about 2 weeks ago. So, I mean, how are you really feeling? Like, try to remove your fandom just a little bit, and based on what you believe about both these teams, truthfully, how do you feel? What concerns do you have? I guess I'll put it to you like this. What's one thing that you think Michigan needs to do to win? And what's one thing you think Michigan cannot do? They cannot do to potentially lose this game. I'm waiting here. Thank you, Christopher. I like Michigan. Okay. Gotta run, gotta stop the run. I like that try. Well put. Well put. 35-14. Run the ball for Michigan. Run the ball effectively. Just like they have been doing. You don't have to get huge chunk plays, but just make sure that you're doing whatever. I really want to hit on what Tribe said. I think it's simple, but it really captures what Michigan has to do. On offense, they have to be able to run the ball effectively. One, stay ahead of schedule. Continue to put Kate in good position and good opportunities where he doesn't have to do too much. Right? He has to. You have the typical 2nd and 3s, the 3rd and 4s, 3rd and 3s, 3rd and 2s, where Josh Gaddis has multiple options. He can run the football potentially for those 2 or 3 yards, or maybe he can catch Georgia defense off guard. Maybe a couple bubble screens, maybe a couple of hitch routes to the tight end, maybe a flare or a couple trick plays to Donovan Edwards. It gives this whole offense so many different options, and it puts the Georgia defense on their heels. So that's why running the ball effectively on offense is so important. On the flip side, to allow this pass rush to have the most effective opportunity to get to Stetson Bennett, you can't allow Georgia to run the ball too effectively, because if that happens and the Georgia offense ahead of schedule, they don't have to, then they don't have to be in those 3rd and 7s, 3rd and 8s, where Stetson Bennett has to go through 1 or 2 progressions down the field to find an open guy. And guess what that means? That means that our guys get to eat up their offensive line. They get home potentially. So I like that try. Venice, you're speaking my language. Put Georgia in 3rd and longs. Yep, I agree. Yeah, Doughboy, you mentioned double teaming Jordan Davis. One interesting about Jordan Davis is that he's not on the field the whole time. So I don't think we have to start off doing that right away. I would like to see how this offensive line, who's been playing the best in the country, how they do with their typical assignments. There may be some chips and Klein situations where Jordan Davis is lined up a certain guy, with maybe the center and the guard are both chipping, and maybe the guard climbs to the second level, the center climbs to the second level, and the rest of the play that whoever's on Jordan Davis initially has them. So I don't know if a double team is needed right away. We'll see. He's obviously a fantastic player, but he's not one of those guys where you have to worry about him 24/7, because for one, he's a huge dude. He just doesn't have the energy to go full tilt every play. So we'll see. But he definitely can be an issue for those short yardage situations where Georgia knows Michigan probably is going to run the football, and it may not be easy to run up the gut against the big fella, but we'll see. They had to, let's see, rules. They had to protect Cade so he can throw the ball behind the linebackers. The middle of the field, our tight end will have a big game. Well, I would hope so. I think the offensive line's done a really good job of protecting Cade. And I think one thing that we've really seen from Cade is he, over the last, I'll say 4 or 5 games, he's taken a lot more shots down the field, and his accuracy has improved so much. I mean, that was the biggest concern with the guy, is that, look, he can hit the little short routes, but when we have a guy streaking down down the sideline or down, in the middle field for a potential post route or a tight end going over the middle, he's missing them. Well, the good thing about Cade is that lately he hasn't missed those guys, so that's um, been really encouraging to see. Let me ask you guys this: if Dax Hill does not play, if he does not play outside of the defensive line, right? So you can't give me Ajabo, you can't give me Hutchinson. Who is your key guy that you think that needs to step up for his Michigan defense? I mean, obviously, I'll go with Josh Ross, but more importantly, I'll throw another name out there. I'll say DJ Turner. That's a guy who has stepped up throughout this year, who we didn't really know much about coming into the season, and it seems like he's gotten better every single week. I'm not saying he's going to be some kind of big time player for this team going forward, but he has been an interesting ray of sunshine, if you will. KD Brown goes to Rod Moore. Okay, I like that. I like that. No Dax, play more nickel. Potentially. Mazzy and Jeter. Okay. Yeah, think about more, anytime you're putting youth in a situation, a younger guy in a situation where in a big game, you just never know what you're going to get. Now, fortunately, at this late in the season, a guy really isn't, a freshman or a sophomore or whatever you consider underclassman to be. But that would be an interesting situation. And I guess at the end of the day, there's no ideal replacement for Dax Hill, but definitely look, this team has the ability and has the talent to be able to still be very effective. And by no means should we press the panic button if Dax doesn't play. But it will be I guarantee for that Georgia offensive coordinator, that's a huge sigh of relief from not being out there. There's one less impact player to worry about. I think we can all agree on that. Yeah, William Rivera. I said that this late in the season. I don't know where you agree with me or you were saying I was wrong. I said this late in the season, most guys have experience, but I was saying in terms of you, it's still, it's your first year of college football or second year of college football, no matter if you're a freshman or sophomore, it still could be a lot. I mean, no, put it to you this way: nobody on this roster has been in this situation before. So I mean, look, the lights are big. Not everybody can handle that. Not saying they won't, but that's always a factor that you have to consider. But we'll see. Where Aaron, Aaron, you made a good point about Gaddis. We'll see what's going to happen to Gaddis. Look, the guy has had an incredible turnaround in terms of his tenure here in Michigan. I mean, that's a guy who most of his fan base wanted out. If you would have asked our Michigan fan base this time last year, a lot of people wanted Josh Gaddis gone. But look what he's done in 1 year. He's totally rebuilt well, he didn't really have a great image to begin with, not a lot of experience, but he's totally built up a really good image for himself. And now you're looking at a guy who's going to probably begin a head coaching job as soon as next year. Michigan will probably now Wes Weber Jr. says Michigan will probably need some success on fourth and short downs. Do you mean on offense or defense? I assume you mean defense, right? Because you're talking about defense, so either way that you're yeah, I need you to elaborate before I give an answer on that. I mean, on offense, yeah. So potentially. I mean, anytime you're in a game where you believe that scoring is going to be at a premium and you need to be able to take advantage of any opportunities you have where you're a remote scoring position. Let's say that, those fourth and short situations are when Michigan's at to Georgia's 42 or 40-yard line. Yeah, those are opportunities where you trust your defense. If you don't get the conversion, you might want to try to take advantage and see if you can convert a couple of those, because maybe that can be the difference. That field goal touchdown can be the difference in winning the game. So I agree with that. Okay, one more. I agree with that, Wes. D Brown says if we get 49 hardball, we win. If we get down Brown hardball, we lose. Well, almost. Jimmy got to the Super Bowl. He didn't win it, but ironically lost against another hardball. so so maybe his own kryptonite championship game is his brother, and thankfully he's not playing against him on Friday. 4 sacks, two turnovers. Michigan 31, Georgia 10. Wow, Change Channel really is putting themselves out there. Well, that's very optimistic. I would love to say that Michigan's going to win that easily. But fine. Let's end on this, guys. We'll do our scoring predictions then. I'll go Michigan 28, Georgia 24. Michigan 28, Georgia 24. Michigan scores the last minute touchdown with about a minute and 15 to go. Georgia gets the ball with a chance to win it, and Michigan comes out with the critical stop and advances to the national title game. I got 35-14, 21-16. Georgia. West is going Georgia to beat Michigan in 24-23 gut punch. Then it's going 31-24 Michigan. 35-24 Michigan. I got Michigan 40. Les Toast, one of our most loyal listeners or watchers. Michigan 41-17. God, you guys have a lot of confidence. I love it. Look, I'll tell you one thing. If Michigan's winning 41-17, we all gonna have a really good New Year's Eve. It's gonna be a really good New Year's Eve regardless, but that's pretty fun right there. I mean, how cool is it we can start talking about the national title game and the game's not even over with? That'll be cool. D Brown going 38-20. Matthew Stevenson, go blue 14-10. So you got an old-fashioned nail biter with a low scoring. I like it. Throwback. No, Wes, I know we all hope you're wrong, man. But look, Georgia is a really good team, guys. It's a reason why they've been number one most of this year. Michigan could easily lose this game. And guess what, guys? There will be no shame at all if Michigan didn't win. This has been a hell of a season. I didn't really say it earlier, but it feels like I hope this doesn't come out the wrong way. It feels like this is everything is gravy at this point. This team has and I'm not normally this person, with say, hey guys, good job, regardless what happens. I'm not normally that type of person, but based on what this team was expected to do and what they've overcome and what they have accomplished, getting the monkey off their back, beating Ohio State, winning a Big Ten title game, everything they do now is gravy. Of course, you don't want to see Michigan go out there and lose in embarrassing fashion, but man, at this point, it would be just gravy if they're able to continue to win. Yeah, D Brown, I get that they haven't had the strongest schedule, but I mean, look, I still give credit is due. It's not like they're Coastal Carolina would last year during COVID. I know that's not an equal comparison, but I'm just saying, like, a team that's playing in a terrible schedule and they're having a great season. Look, I know you take it with a grain of salt with a team strength of schedule, but still, they were rolling teams. It's not like they were winning nail biter to start their season. Most games they were destroying teams, and that is something to be said about that. And you got one thing you got to consider too is that, look, Nick Saban is Kirby Smart's kryptonite. So who knows? Georgia plays any other team. Maybe maybe Saban just has Kirby's number two, and we'll find that out as well. But I see your point. I'm not saying there's no that there's no there's no validity to it. Sure, I get it. You play what's on your schedule, and I think the most important thing um to remember, even when a team has a weaker schedule. Cause think about Clemson, guys. I mean, the years that Clemson were, in the playoffs and they beat Bama, was it 2019? If I'm not mistaken, or maybe 18. I can't remember off memory. I mean, Clemson never has some kind of great schedule. The ACC sucks. Let's say it like so, but they still show up in the playoffs without having huge tests in their regular season, and they seem to not miss a beat, and they're ready to play against that higher competition. So you gotta be careful with this whole schedule game. I'm not saying there's no validity to it, but that's not everything. Okay. Okay. Well, look, I said in the last stream, I really feel like, and I could be wrong, it wouldn't be the first time that this Michigan team really feels like a team of destiny. For what they have to overcome, you kind of feel like one of those special years where um, this team it was meant to do something special. And I don't think the story. And when I say about special, I don't think it just ends with a Big Ten title game. I think there's a legitimate chance this team could be hosting up that clear crystal ball, um, or Dr. Pepper. Man, that's the old one. Which one is it, guys? Is this the Dr. Pepper Trophy now, or is it the clear crystal ball still? I still think they do the clear crystal ball. If I'm not mistaken. Um, I typically kind of tune out a little bit during national title games now. 'Cause I'm so sick of being the same teams. I still watch, but by the time the trophy presentation shows up, I kind of tune out. I'm not exactly sure which trophy they're going to be hosting when they win a national title, but I definitely believe that there's a chance. Thanks, the Dr. Pepper Trophy. Um, I definitely think there's a chance that this could be one of those special years in which we get to talk about, like 97. We no longer have to hear about that stigma. You guys ever won a championships in 97? I think it's one of those years where we get to say, you know what, we're a national title winner potentially. And so to with that, I just want to say I wish everyone here a happy new year. Thank you so much on the behalf of myself and Desmond and Mark for your loyalty and with tuning into this channel. So first year of us doing this channel, so we definitely want to continue to hear feedback and find ways to improve, um, and continue to deliver content and hopefully stimulating conversation you know um about Michigan, and also just the landscape of college football. I think we all here enjoy it, and I wish you all a safe holiday, and look forward to talking to you guys before and after the game on Friday. So take care and good night.